Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Let us express our appreciation for the Metropolitan Police Department Honor Guard and vocalist Rhea Walker. Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome. I am Jim Kroll, Director of the Executive Office of U.S. Attorneys, and I am honored to be with you today as we gather for this special ceremony to celebrate the 37th Deputy Attorney General of the United States, Rod J. Rosenstein. Before we begin today's program, please join me in welcoming on stage our 85th Attorney General, William Barr, our guest of honor, Rod Rosenstein, the 84th Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, Assistant Attorney General for the Office of Legal Policy, Beth Williams, the Director of the FBI, Chris Wray, the United States Attorney for the District of Maryland, Robert Hur, and Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General, Ed O'Callahan. Welcome. Also joining us today in the audience, I would like to welcome Kellyanne Conway, Counselor to the President, Secretary of Health and Human Services, Alexander Azar, Senator Richard Burr, Senator Tom Cotton, and Congresswoman Susan Brooks, as well as Deputy Secretary of State John Sullivan. Thank you all and all of our distinguished guests for being here today. Thank you for coming. While there are many special guests with us today, none are more important than the family of Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein. Please join me in giving a very, very warm welcome to Lisa Barsumian, wife of the Deputy Attorney General, daughters Julia and Allison, and parents Robert and Jerry Rosenstein. Welcome. The entire department greatly appreciates the enormous support that you have provided to our Deputy Attorney General as he dedicated himself to seeking justice, to keeping our country safe, and to ensuring that the law is enforced equally and fairly for all. One of the great privileges of my career has been to serve under Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein for the past 13 years. From the time then U.S. Attorney Rosenstein hired me as an Assistant U.S. Attorney in Maryland, I have appreciated his perseverance, his professionalism, and his unwavering dedication to the rule of law. As Deputy Attorney General, he brought these qualities with him to Washington, where they have served him and us incredibly well for the last 2 years. The department will miss him, but he leaves behind a legacy of lawyers who know what true public service looks like because of his leadership. Our first speaker this afternoon is one of those lawyers who, like me, has been fortunate enough to serve under both U.S. Attorney Rosenstein and Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein. Robert Hur is the 48th United States Attorney for the District of Maryland, where he previously served as an Assistant U.S. Attorney for 7 years. Prior to his confirmation as United States Attorney, Rob served as the Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General. At this time, it is my great pleasure to introduce Robert Hur.
Thank you very much, Jim. And good afternoon, friends and distinguished guests. I have given a lot of thought to what I would say on such a bittersweet occasion before such a distinguished audience. My first thought was, I should grow a beard worthy of a paydag. I, too, want a set of viral internet memes talking about how impressive my facial hair is. Many friends and family members have asked me recently, do you know that guy with the beard? Yes, I know him. Yes, he's a good guy. Yes, his beard really is awesome. And to be honest, I haven't really thought about whether he resembles Ulysses S. Grant, but I'll think about it. So I set my mind to growing my own beard, and the results speak for themselves. And I realized this is serious business. These are serious people doing serious work. I cannot waste their time with levity. So I thought about sharing with you how working with the Deputy Attorney General has changed me. Several months into serving as paydag, a few people close to me, including my wife, said, "You're starting to sound like the Deputy Attorney General." That made sense. I was spending almost all of my waking hours with the man. So when my wife said to me, "You're starting to sound like the DAG," I replied, "Excellent." Keep moving forward. Justice Jackson, rule of law. My wife shook her head and turned away. I maintained my deadpan expression. So I decided it's okay to allow for a little levity because much of my time in ODAG, which is what we call the Office of the Deputy Attorney General, was punctuated by laughter. The DAG's office is blessed with some of the smartest and the most dedicated lawyers in the country. And because our work is so serious, thank goodness that we and the DAG had very good senses of humor. When you're going through tough times, when you say, "You can't make this stuff up," you can either laugh or you can cry. And I remember a lot of laughter with the DAG. And I certainly don't remember any crying. To borrow a phrase from Tom Hanks in A League of Their Own, there's no crying in ODAG. Now, some of the laughter was mischievous. I had the privilege of accompanying the DAG on a trip to China, where he represented the department at an Interpol meeting, and we discussed the scourge of fentanyl with Chinese authorities. The Chinese, to be honest, did not know what to make of me, perhaps wondering if I could understand what they were saying without the aid of interpreters. I do not speak a lick of Chinese, as the DAG knew, but I had told the DAG that my kids were taking Mandarin lessons because it seemed like a pretty useful language to know. Now, the DAG, during the exchange of pleasantries, shared with our Chinese counterparts Mr. He is teaching his kids Mandarin. The Chinese reacted visibly to this revelation. Some looked delighted, others chagrined, and they started to address me in Chinese. This was awkward. I chose not to bluff my way out of the situation for fear of creating an international incident. I fumbled to explain that I was paying other people to teach my kids Chinese. Good one, sir. You got me. The DAG has said that one of the best things about a job like his is helping pick the people you leave behind. And sir, as you look around the Great Hall, you see so many people whom you have befriended, supported, mentored, and led. And as you wrote in your resignation letter, the department and the U.S. Attorney's offices are staffed with skilled and principled leaders devoted to the values that make America great. It is such a privilege to succeed you as United States Attorney for the District of Maryland. You've advised me that the most important thing I can do as U.S. Attorney is to hire good people. I've followed that advice. One of my favorite things to do is to welcome new hires to the office on their first day, share with them my thoughts on the importance of safeguarding the department's reputation for integrity, and administering the oath of office. I know that this oath is familiar to you, sir, as you have administered it to many AUSAs and sworn the oath many times yourself during your decades of service with the department. Swearing an oath is no small thing. It forces us to slow down and mark with solemnity a significant challenge we're about to take on. We do not swear oaths to do easy things. Oaths are about serious things that require real fortitude and commitment. Entering military service, testifying in court, beginning a marriage, and becoming a police officer. And it's fitting that on the eve of Police Week, we take note of the extraordinary challenges that law enforcement officers face routinely. Doing jobs with high stakes and significant discretion, we may be tempted to do the easy wrong instead of the hard right. But often, there is no easy choice. There will be intense scrutiny, pressure from all sides, armchair quarterbacking, and personal attacks no matter what you do. You simply get good advice, think carefully, make the call you believe is right, and then take the hits. DAG, you have fulfilled your oath. You have defended the Constitution. You have borne true faith and allegiance to the same. And you have well and faithfully discharged the duties of your office. It is hard to imagine the Justice Department without Rod Rosenstein. But in case you're interested, we do have a vacancy in Greenbelt right now. You would be a great AUSA. DAG, you showed how to fulfill your duties with grace, humor, and dignity. You took the hits, and you kept it classy. We will continue to do our best to do the same. Thank you. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Beth Williams, Assistant Attorney General, Office of Legal Policy.
Good afternoon. It is an honor to be here with you today and to say a few words about our Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein. Much has and will be said about Rod's public-facing role, but I'd like to share some thoughts with you about the Rod Rosenstein that I know. They say the mark of a good boss is knowing the names of his employees' children. Well, after I introduced my children to Rod, he not only remembered their names, he remembered the names of the stuffed animals that they were holding at the time. Tasha and Dottie, right, Rod? That story probably is not surprising to those of you who have had the good fortune to work with Rod. At the Department of Justice, each and every day, Rod demonstrates that care for the people with whom he works and for the important missions they are serving. And he displayed true leadership, enduring the slings and the arrows, the testimony and the news stories, while allowing the rest of us to focus on the important work of the department. And for that, I know that many people in this building will be forever grateful. Anyone who has paid attention to Rod's speeches or who has read the back of this afternoon's program knows two things about Rod. One, he has a deep admiration for former Attorney General and Supreme Court Justice Robert Jackson. And two, he loves a good Jackson quote and often quotes Justice Jackson in his speeches. We at the Office of Legal Policy often undertake our own analyses and consider statistics, so we decided to do that here. And it turns out that Rod quotes Justice Jackson approximately 5.2 times per hour during a typical workday. I'm told by Lisa that that's on par with his quoting rate at home. Back in March, there were actually reports that he had run out of Robert Jackson quotes, and so he planned on leaving the department then. But thankfully, he found a few more, and that has gotten him through till May. There is a reason that Rod quotes Robert Jackson's words so often. It is not only because he was a great champion of the law. It is because he so eloquently communicated the principles that form the pillar of our work and our mission at the Department of Justice. Jackson had a North Star, an understanding of the rule of law that guided him. Rod Rosenstein shares many qualities with Robert Jackson. He too inspires those who work for him and with him. He too has a North Star. And in 50 years, it's easy to imagine our grandchildren will be quoting words that he said, and we hope living up to the values that he holds. Given this, I was happy to come across a Jackson quote describing the type of vanishing lawyer that has served as an American institution. Robert Jackson wrote, "He left his mark on his times, and he was worth knowing. He loved his profession. He had a real sense of dedication to the administration of justice. He held his head high as a lawyer. He rendered and exacted courtesy, honor, and straightforwardness at the bar. He respected the judicial office deeply, demanded the highest standards of competence and disinterestedness and dignity. The law to him was like a religion, and its practice was more than a means of support. It was a mission. Luckily, that type of lawyer has not completely vanished, and he is here with us today. Rod, it has been an honor to serve with you. To Lisa, to your parents, to your girls, you should be very proud. And I find it only appropriate to end with a Rod Rosenstein quote. I devoted my career to law enforcement because the rule of law is the foundation of human liberty. The rule of law secures our freedom. It will secure our children's freedom. And we can only achieve it if people who enforce the law set aside partisanship, because the rule of law requires a fair and independent process, a process where all citizens are equal in the eyes of the government. Rod, thank you for your service, and may God bless you in the next chapter of your career.
Thank you, Beth. It is now my pleasure to welcome the 84th Attorney General back to the Department of Justice as our next speaker. Like today's guest of honor, before joining the department's leadership, Jeff Sessions served as a United States Attorney for 12 years. Most recently, General Sessions led the Department of Justice from February of 2017 to November of 2018. It is wonderful to have him back home for this occasion. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jeff Sessions.
Thank you. Thank you all. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Jim, for your remarks and your service to this department as EOUSA Director, and your energy and leadership really has played a powerful role in having the best group of United States attorneys ever. We used to claim my class, the Reagan class, was the best, but this class is the best. And Rod, we helped pick a good group, I think, no doubt about it. So I'm honored to be back with all of you to share this special moment with Rod and the department that we love. Today marks the departure of one of the Department of Justice's most important leaders in its history. Rod came here almost 29 years ago and has held the deputy position in this, $27 billion agency for a little over 2 years. Before that, he was a member, held a number of key positions in the department, including being the United States Attorney for Maryland for 12 years. Rod once told me only 3% of United States attorneys ever served 12 years, and that he and I were 2 of them. Now, I don't know how he calculated that, but as you know already, he's good with numbers. Wharton School of Business perhaps had something to do with that. And some of our prosecutors and U.S. attorneys know he's good with numbers too, because if they're not performing, they hear from him about their numbers. Well, I had heard of Rod before I met him and remembered how he was nominated by President Bush for a circuit court judgeship, but was blocked by certain senators. That was another thing we had in common. Their complaint was he was too valuable as United States Attorney. They couldn't lose him. Well, that was a much kinder thing than they said about me. And I can say that for you, Rod. So as I considered my choice for Deputy Attorney General, I knew that I had been away from the department for some 25 years, and that I needed a proven prosecutor, a crime fighter. That was going to be a top priority of what we were doing. I wanted someone who understood all the aspects of the department, who knew this department, a strong manager, and a man of the law who believed in the law, and a man of integrity. He shared my view on so many of these matters, on good law enforcement policies, that if you do the right things effectively, you could make our communities safer. Crime does not have to go up if you do it right. He knew that homicides and violent crimes had jumped in the previous 2 years. He was committed to adopting policies that would reverse those trends. We discussed how to identify and confirm the great United States Attorney group that we were moving forward. He understood the importance of state and local law enforcement, and that it was essential for our federal team to work with them if we were going to reduce crime. 85% of our people are state and local. In fact, we have assembled a truly great group here, and he did. We discussed the importance of enhancing discipline within the department, following our rules, following the rules, following the law, and avoiding the politicalization and leaks and other things that seem too often to occur. We discussed the importance of adhering to the rule of law. We discussed that quite a bit, frankly. It was the top matter in our discussions, I believe, as we discussed what we might do together at this department. So I had watched the Office of Attorney General from afar in Alabama as an assistant United States attorney and as United States attorney, almost with a sense of awe. On the Senate Judiciary Committee for 20 years, I had another ability to see the office from a different perspective. So when we came in, I had no doubt, Richard, there would be a lot of controversies. And during my tenure, the Office of Attorney General just frequently finds itself at the vortex of law and politics and separation of powers. But in truth, I have to say, our run exceeded my expectations. I got to say, considerably. So when I recused, using the recent words of Attorney General Barr, the baby fell to Rod. That's just the way it was. The so-called collusion investigation became his, and it was no little matter. There was a continual uproar. Decisions had to be made, and those decisions fell to him, and they fell to him alone. He had to become the Attorney General for this matter. He made every decision based on his best judgment of what he thought was best for this country. He stayed the course during some of the most difficult times in the history of the department. So the investigation was ongoing when he arrived. He didn't start it. And once started, it's my observation over the years, these things just become unstoppable. They have to work their will. Having worked for independent counsel Ken Starr, Rod understood better than most the nature of the special counsel, its regulations. He concluded that justice would be best served by appointing a special counsel, and he chose the respected Bob Mueller, all in accordance with the procedures of the Department of Justice. These procedures had been set up, fortunately, for just such times as this. Mr. Mueller was given the support and time needed to complete his work. Pursuant to the regulations, Mr. Mueller prepared a report to the Attorney General for his decision. Attorney General Barr reviewed the report, made his judgment, as was his duty. Perfect justice, according to California Supreme Court Justice Macklin Fleming a number of years ago, is not achievable, he said, in this world. Perfect justice can't be achieved. And to pursue perfect justice, he says, can cause us to lose what justice we can achieve. So at the end, our system, judgments are rendered by juries and judges and other adjudicators. Some of those decisions are final and non-reviewable, some can be reviewed. But in America, we are committed to a lawful process. We believe that truth is best found and justice best achieved if the correct process is followed properly, fairly. To deviate from established procedures strikes at the heart of justice in America. Rod, you did your duty as it fell upon you. You didn't ask for it, that's for sure. You initiated the process, you followed the regulations. The system worked its will. What more can a public servant do? So I can't close without a word to Lisa and your wonderful and supportive spouse and your fabulous daughters, Allie and Julie. I've gotten to know them. They are so wonderful. And I have to say my admiration for you has risen knowing them because they're so fine. I understand the girls are big fans of Ben Folds, who produced a Rod Rosenstein ballad. You know, I don't know if it hit the top of the charts, but it was pretty good. And we've had many wonderful times, but things were often a bit not normal. I remember a dinner at a nearby restaurant with Noel Francisco and Rod and I one night, and a lot of things were going on. The paparazzi caught us, and even that dinner became some sort of message, it seemed. But there was a time when I changed my mind about testifying before a committee. The Appropriations Committee had me set to testify, and the Intelligence Committee, Richard Burr's committee, had me. So I decided I better go to Richard at the last minute. So who was going to appear before the appropriators? Rod. He got about a few hours' notice and dutifully went over there on behalf of the Attorney General and took the heat that I'm sure occurred, but he did a great job. So I know it's been a tough period for your family, but one thing I know for certain, and that is that this family knows and loves Rod, and that has never wavered. And what I know full well, Rod, is that you fully understood the nature of your responsibility as Deputy Attorney General, and the result is that we can soon, I hope, get this nation back to work confronting the great challenges of our age. And we can know full well also that you have honorably overseen this process, which has affirmed the rule of law, has achieved a degree of justice that is worthy of this great Department of Justice. We thank you for your service, extend our thanks also to your team, the DAGS team, for all the work they've done. In this 2-year period, there have been extraordinary achievements. Crime has been reduced after going up for 2 consecutive years. Strong actions on a series of fronts have targeted the opioid epidemic, and they have begun to have positive effects. Violent crime and illegal use of firearms are being vigorously prosecuted. The law has been followed, and we have more productivity and utilize the monies of the taxpayers of this country in a most effective way. So, Rod, thank you for your service. Thank you for being a friend and a loyal partner in the efforts and vision and ideals we brought to the department. God bless you in your future endeavors.
Thank you, General. Our next speaker is also no stranger to the office of the Deputy Attorney General. Christopher Wray served as the Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General, without a beard, before becoming Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division in 2003. He has served as the Director of the FBI since August of 2017. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Director Chris Wray.
Well, there are a lot of great traditions at this department, but one of them is opportunities like this to all come together at one time and to celebrate the leadership and service of a valued colleague like Rod. And I have the honor today of presenting a gift that carries a special meaning to all of us charged with enforcing the laws of the United States. We have a shadow box here that includes the badges worn by our law enforcement agents, inspectors, deputy U.S. marshals, and correctional officers. And these are folks whose sacrifice is unique. They risk their lives. Sometimes, tragically, they lose them to keep all of us safe. And the DOJ law enforcement organizations represented in this shadow box include ATF, BOP, DEA, FBI, Interpol Washington, JMD's Security and Emergency Planning Staff, OIG, and the Deputy U.S. Marshals. Rod has spent, as you heard, almost 30 years working in this department, and I've known him for almost 20 of those. And he's certainly seen his share of changes in the law, changes in the way we do business, changes in the threats we all face, but through it all, he has maintained that same level of dedication and service to the American people we all serve. And I know I've been grateful for Rod's counsel and support on countless occasions, probably never more so than when he has reaffirmed the importance of the long view, to look down the road beyond the Beltway or the latest news cycle in confronting both the challenges and the opportunities that face the department and the Bureau. He's a friend whose service has weathered the test of time, and that is something we should all admire. As you've heard, Rod is a huge fan of Attorney General Robert Jackson, and it's getting to the point where nobody can find a Robert Jackson quote that he hasn't used, as you heard. But we managed to find one that we think he has not used, which is near and dear to us. Attorney General Jackson was speaking to the FBI National Academy in 1940, and in his remarks, General Jackson commended them for their devotion to the honorable but often thankless task of law enforcement. So, Rod, on behalf of the men and women in law enforcement, we appreciate the chance to commend you and ensure that this day is anything but thankless. And on behalf of the entire Department of Justice, we want to present you this shadow box with gratitude for your service, for your friendship, for your patriotism, and we wish you all the best in your next chapter.
Thank you, Chris. When today's guest of honor joined the Department of Justice through the Honors Program in 1990, our next speaker was serving then as Deputy Attorney General. Shortly thereafter, General Barr began his first tour of duty as Attorney General of the United States, first serving in that role as the 77th Attorney General of the United States from 1991 to 1993. General Barr was confirmed as our 85th Attorney General in February of this year, making him one of only two people in history, and the first since the 19th century, to hold this high public office twice. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, please welcome to the podium the Attorney General of the United States, William Barr.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I begin, there's a matter that I feel has to be resolved before Rod leaves the building. Rod, could you come up, please, and stand next to me?
Take my position.
Yeah, up next to me. There's been a debate raging for the last few months, and I think we have to get it resolved and decided tonight. And that is, which one of us is capable of the most deadpan expression? Now, I know this is a little unfair because I do my best work in the hearing, in congressional hearings. Rod does his standing behind the Attorney General at press conferences. So, what do you say? Is it Rod or me? Rod?
20 minutes.
Thank you for all being here, and thanks to everyone who put this event together. You know, it's not traditional to hold a farewell ceremony for a Deputy Attorney General in the Great Hall, but this is Rod Rosenstein, and given what Rod has given to this department, the years of service and his achievements, we all know that it's the right thing to have Rod's farewell ceremony here today. Now, this occasion honors Rod not only for his tenure as Deputy Attorney General, but also for his nearly 3-decade career here at the department. And when Rod arrived in 1990, as Jim just said, there was this very svelte and dynamic Deputy Attorney General, who I'm sure serves as an inspiration for you over here. Now, in those days, the deputy job was a lot different. But I'll tell you now, the Attorney General job was a lot different also. You like records. This must be a record of Attorney General being proposed for contempt within 100 days of taking office. But Rod's arrival at Main Justice in 1990 was not the true start of his DOJ service. As a law student at Harvard, Rod interned at the U.S. Attorney's Office in the District of Massachusetts, and the acting U.S. attorney in that office at the time was none other than Bob Mueller. And Bob then went on to be Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division, where Rod was first assigned as an honors program lawyer. Little did we know that we would be getting the old band back together again. Now, I've spent the intervening years outside the department, but Rod hasn't, and he's been serving here as a line attorney, as AUSA, as the principal deputy in the tax division, as the U.S. attorney in the District of Maryland, among other positions. And I had the good fortune to interact with Rod over the years a few times, and I recognized him as a superb lawyer who was dedicated to the department. But I've been particularly fortunate to return to the department and to work with Rod in his latest role as the Deputy Attorney General. On a personal level, it's been a real privilege and a pleasure to have him with me these last several months. It's a matter of public record that we've spent a great deal of time together of late, but less well known, though certainly known to all of you here assembled, are Rod's characteristics that he brings with him to the office every day. Exceptional intelligence, sound judgment crafted from experience, composure even under the most intense pressure and scrutiny, and above all, an upbeat spirit and keen sense of humor. And I leaned heavily on all of those qualities over the past few months, and so thank you, Rod, for your support and your friendship. Now, the attributes I've just described have made Rod an exceptional leader. And part of that leadership has been his ability to assemble and operate an outstanding team. In my opinion, Jeff Sessions and Rod played a decisive role in putting together, I think, the strongest team of presidential appointees at the department that I can ever remember. And the department and the country will long benefit from the focus and energy that Rod put into that process. And Rod assembled an outstanding staff in the deputy's office. As we all know, the deputy's job is perhaps the most challenging management position in the government today. Rod has excelled in that role, and he would be the first to tell you that a large part of his success has been the team of consummate professionals he recruited and forged into an effective and efficient staff in the Office of the Deputy Attorney General. Rod's legacy of leadership is also reflected in the department's record of accomplishment under his stewardship. Under Rod, the department has achieved record levels of productivity. It has advanced critical priorities, reducing violent crime, vigorously enforcing the nation's immigration laws, and fighting hard against the scourge of illegal drugs, especially the opioid epidemic. He's faced criticism for all corners, but has proven remarkably unflappable. And this, in turn, has shown that the department is unflappable in the face of public and political pressure. Rod, you can leave here proud knowing that the department is better for your efforts and your leadership. You have left an indelible mark. So again, on behalf of myself and the Department of Justice, thank you for your service. As we bid you farewell, we know this is not really goodbye, and you will always be a friend to me and a friend to the Department of Justice. Thank you. So another tradition at the department is when a deputy attorney general steps down is to present him with an American flag that has been flown over the main justice building. And so on behalf of your friends and colleagues here at the department, it is my honor to present this flag to you.
I believe we have a special presentation, if we could dim the lights. General, do you want to turn your attention?
I first met Rod when he came for an interview, having applied for a clerkship in my chambers. My immediate impression was that I want this fellow to clerk for me. He was really extraordinarily helpful as a clerk in terms of penetrating the issues and the cases, discussing them with me, doing first drafts of opinions, everything that a clerk could possibly be expected to do, he did extremely well. It was clear to me that he was going to have a brilliant career.
First time I met Rod was when I was back in the public integrity section in 1990. He showed up fresh from a clerkship there. He looked even younger than his age at that time. He made an impression on a lot of people just because he took the job right away. He was very enthusiastic, clearly very smart, hardworking. He was ready for virtually anything we could throw at him.
After serving with the Public Integrity Section and several other positions within the Department of Justice early on in his career, Rod was given an incredible opportunity to serve with the Independent Counsel.
I met him in Little Rock, Arkansas, when we were recruiting Rod to leave the Justice Department on detail and to become part of the Independent Counsel's office in the Whitewater investigation. What impressed me the most about Rod Rosenstein was his complete professionalism, his soaring intelligence, and the fact that he embodied the policies and practices and culture of the Department of Justice. He was a fabulous trial lawyer. He was assiduous in his preparation, but he was also great on his feet in the courtroom. One of my favorite recollections of Rod Rosenstein, the trial lawyer, this particular occasion, Rod had a terrible fever. He had the flu, and Rod Rosenstein just stepped up, sick as the proverbial dog. You would not have known it. Hour after hour, virtually all day of that long trial day, he was on his feet. He looked a bit flush. He may have been perspiring, but Rod is so cool, you never would have known it. You can depend on Rod. He was Rod the Dependable.
Like most U.S. Attorney's offices, Maryland gets really great applications. We really get quality people applying. Rod attached a transcript from a case that he had. He was one of the Whitewater cases that went to trial. He had like a stand-up role and it was examining some witnesses, and he got the transcripts and he attached that to his application. So I've interviewed a lot of people over the years, and not too many people have sent me transcripts from sort of a high-profile trial as an indication of what else they can do.
Both Rod and Steve Dettelbach, who was a trial attorney in the Civil Rights Division, ended up coming to the office around the same time.
We got hired and started the same day as AUSAs, and Rod and I worked in that office together for, gosh, it must have been almost 6 years. He has an amazing ability to remain focused, to look at the big picture, and that was the time that I actually have this claim to fame. Somebody had the horrible judgment to make me Rod Rosenstein's supervisor.
Greenbelt's is an amazing place, as any of the AUSAs who ever worked there will tell you, including Rod. But it is interesting that it spawned not only Rod, who became the U.S. Attorney in Maryland, but Rob Herr, the current U.S. Attorney, Steve Dettelbach, who was in Ohio, and we had a couple other guys who became U.S. Attorneys in Illinois.
Rod recognized when he became U.S. Attorney then that the key problem in Baltimore was violent crime, and he was determined to try to do something about that.
Maryland, historically has had a number of public corruption cases, and certainly during Rod's tenure.
It was a corruption case where we were prosecuting, some state and local partners. There was a lot of sensitivity there, but we also needed their help to get the case done. Rod was very careful and very, very concerned about making sure that we were partners with our state and locals who were involved in the operation, but also, we're going to have to answer to the fact that, some of their officers had become involved in this particular corruption matter.
The way he ran the U.S. Attorney's Office was very hands-on, he knew what was going on in the cases.
He loved hearing about the trials. I think he really missed trial work. And he did do one 6-week trial as a second chair when he was U.S. Attorney. It was really hard for him to be out of the office for 6 weeks, but he loved it, and it was a great case.
To us in Baltimore, we just know him, like I said, as Rod. And we know him that way because he always put the community first. And law enforcement is a local thing. It really is not a national thing. It's local. And we solve problems and we handle issues and we affect the community locally. And that was Rod.
He did a great job working as part of the U.S. Attorney's community, and he did it for a long time, and he saw lots of different administrations and people come and go out of that community. And Rod was always somebody who was a mainstay. He was always somebody who knew what being a U.S. Attorney was all about.
When you look at Rod Rosenstein's background, experience, and accomplishments, how could you do any better than Rod Rosenstein as the Deputy Attorney General of the United States? I don't think you could.
The first time I met Rod was when he was the nominee to be Deputy Attorney General. He came over to the Department of Justice, then he was still the U.S. Attorney in Maryland, and I got the opportunity to sit down with him and tell him whether the good news or the bad news, depending on your perspective, that he was stuck with me to help shepherd him through the confirmation process. And I remember from that first initial interaction just being blown away, not only by his intellect, there's a lot of smart people in the department, but his passion, his knowledge, his confidence. I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, this individual really
really is the full package. One of the things that made Rod Rosenstein such an attractive candidate and nominee for someone like me to work with was his broad base of support. You know, as you are aware, his confirmation process ended spectacularly. He had a great confirmation hearing and then ultimately was confirmed with 94 votes, which in this era is just unheard of, to have 94 people in the U.S. Senate support you.
It's a tradition for high-ranking officials of the Department of Justice during the course of their tenure with the department to argue before the Supreme Court of the United States. Rod was particularly interested in this because he had served as an appellate lawyer throughout his career, and he was particularly effective, once again, before the High Court.
He gave a Supreme Court argument. Amidst everything else that was going on, he went up and did a moot in front of the best that the Solicitor General's office has, and they were left thinking, wow, this guy's got it.
Rod, having served for more than 25 years in the Justice Department at a variety of levels, both as a prosecutor, as an appellate lawyer, and a variety of leadership positions, he was particularly well suited to address a number of issues that had been percolating throughout the department for a number of years.
So one of the projects he undertook, which I don't think anyone thought was really possible, was redoing the U.S. Attorney's Manual. And so he literally went section by section, taking out anything that was no longer applicable or was redundant or was superseded, and created what's called the Justice Manual. So we actually now have a true operating manual for the Department of Justice.
So one of the projects that the DAG undertook during his time as Deputy Attorney General was a review and a revision of the corporate fraud enforcement policies of the department. So these get a lot of scrutiny within the white-collar enforcement bar particularly. So he spent a lot of time looking at this, and his real focus was, how do we make things streamlined and more efficient? These policies have to work in the real world. Our criminal and our civil attorneys have to be able to apply these policies in real life. So he spent a lot of time looking at that and making them more user-friendly for the department's attorneys, and to give more certainty for folks on the enforcement end of the community.
One of the DAG's proudest accomplishments, I know, is his ability to recruit such quality people to come to the Department of Justice and all of the U.S. Attorney's offices. He has been impressed by the way that they have carried out what he hoped to have been the department's agenda, and I know that he's very proud of that.
The investiture ceremony for me as U.S. Attorney in Baltimore, one of the things I said to the children in the audience was working with the Deputy Attorney General and Director Wray was like working with a couple superheroes. You knew the whole time that they were utterly committed to keeping us all safe and doing the right thing.
I think given the times we live in right now, Rod was the right man for the job of Deputy Attorney General. He's somebody who had the background to assume that office, and having worked his way up from a line prosecutor in the department all the way to U.S. Attorney, having spent time at Maine Justice as well as out in a U.S. Attorney's office.
His tenure at the Department of Justice is what the Department of Justice and the U.S. Attorney's offices are all about, trying to do the right thing every day. And it was just, it's an honor to call myself a friend.
I would be unsurprised if Rod took a breather and tried to pay the college tuitions that he's facing now.
So the year is 2030, and we are having a similar celebration, but it's Rod swearing into the Supreme Court.
I could see Rod Rosenstein probably working again for me.
What I know he'll be doing is sending various staffers a series of emails at 2 in the morning, making sure that his clients are being well served, assuming he's in private practice.
I hope that he's taking a bunch of vacations and that he's getting some time with his family.
He would be a great college university president.
I hope I see him in a place where he's taking it down a notch and where he's relaxing and getting to take some vacation time that he didn't take over the last 3 decades, and spending some time with Lisa and the kids.
I absolutely could see him coaching for the Orioles. He played on our softball team every year, and we were the USA O's because we were in Baltimore. So he already has a head start. He already played for the O's, so now he could coach the O's.
One of our favorite memories, my sister and I, with our dad, is going on these unplanned road trips where we would kind of have a general destination in mind, but nothing firm, and my dad would just drive until he got tired, and we would pull into a McDonald's or a Cracker Barrel or one of our favorite restaurants, and he would quickly find a hotel reservation, and it definitely kind of got us into places that we wouldn't necessarily have been before. And we definitely enjoyed kind of the adventurous part of that, not necessarily knowing exactly where we were going and not having a plan, which definitely changed once the marshals came in, just because they really like to have a plan.
One of the things that I love most about my dad is that he always makes time for me, my sister, and my mom, no matter how busy his day is or his week is.
One of the things that I really like about my dad is he's always there for me, no matter what I have going on, what kind of assignment I need a question answered on. He will always call me, text me, FaceTime me, whatever, and try to get that question answered.
Before my soccer tryouts, I used to watch this motivational video, and it had a Rocky Balboa quote in it. And it ain't about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, how much you can take and keep moving forward. And it kind of became one of our quotes, and he would say it to me when I had a lot of things going on, and I would say it to him when he had a lot of things going on. So for his birthday, I got it inscribed on a plaque, and he has it up in his office. It became Twitter famous when he talked about it in one of his speeches, so I was really proud of that. Thanks, Dad.
I could definitely see him being a professor, maybe not at my college right now, but if I decide to go to law school, I think it would be really cool if he was a professor at whatever law school I decided to go to.
He may find himself in Little Rock, Arkansas. Every time he talks about it, his face kind of lights up. I don't think my dad's gonna stop working anytime soon, but I do hope that in the future he takes a few breaks every once in a while on the weekends and just drives down to the beach.
I think it's definitely bittersweet. I'm looking forward to the next chapter and seeing what happens, but I definitely think that him being in this position has taught me a lot, kind of how to stand up for what you believe in and how, to do the right thing despite whatever other people might say.
One of my favorite things to do on a Friday or Saturday night is to watch a movie with my dad, and I've noticed, most of my friends don't kind of feel that way. They don't, whenever their parents are home, they don't want to go do something, and there's been so many times when my friends have asked if I want to go out, and I'd say, I really want to go watch a movie with my dad, just because I think we end up actually spending more time together because we have less time to spend together, and I think that's kind of been a great thing.
I think that it's also been an experience that has brought our family together, my mom, my sister, and I especially, just because it's something that we all share and that, we can talk about, and it brings us closer, and it's something that is a really unique experience to us that we'll obviously have for the rest of our lives. So one of my dad's favorite songs is Humble and Kind. I think it really resonates with him. Obviously, I see him as someone who's very humble and very kind, and he'll sometimes play it in his office when he's doing work, and it makes me smile because, that's how I see him, and I really just hope that's how everyone else sees him too.
Finally, it is time to hear from today's guest of honor. Much could be and has been said about the Deputy Attorney General's 30 years of distinguished service to the Department of Justice, and you are all closely acquainted with his many accomplishments. The Deputy Attorney General has often reminded us that our system of government is not self-executing. It relies on wisdom and self-restraint. Throughout his career with the department, Rod Rosenstein has tempered zeal with kindness. He has sought the truth. He has served the law, and he has approached each task with humility. He has served as a guardian of the rule of law and preserved it in his time for many future generations. I have no doubt that Justice Jackson would approve. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I represent the United States. Those are the words spoken by Department of Justice attorneys at the start of every federal trial. Each of us represents the United States, the entire United States. More importantly, we represent every one of the citizens, all ideologies and political affiliations, all races and religions. We represent supporters and critics. We represent victims and criminals. Our oath of office begins with a promise to support and defend the Constitution. The point is to establish a legal duty that overrides loyalty to anyone else. And in the final clause of that oath, we swear to well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office. You can only fulfill that charge if you understand the duties. I served under 5 presidents and 9 Senate-confirmed attorneys general. 10 if you count Bill Barr twice. We're not quite sure about that. I spent most of my career outside Washington, but I worked at headquarters 3 times, 4 years in the early 1990s as a trial attorney, 4 years in the early 2000s as a supervisor, and for the past 2 years in my current job. I frequently speak about the inspiration I draw from 3 aspects of this main justice building: the art it contains, the people it employs, and the principles that it represents. Every floor of this building contains reminders for me of heroes, mentors, and friends. They taught me that political considerations may influence policy decisions, but when it comes to individual cases, this department stands apart from politics. Attorney General Jeff Sessions told us to follow regular order and ensure the nonpartisan administration of justice. And that is what we did every day. And that is what the department will continue to do under Attorney General Bill Barr. So what is it that secures liberty in America? It's not just the words of the law, it's about the character of the people. When you exit this great hall and walk into the courtyard of the main justice building, if you look up, you'll see a Latin inscription that reads, "Privilegium obligatio." It means that when you accept a privilege, you incur an obligation. People who earn the privilege of joining this department accept the obligation to seek the truth, serve the law, and faithfully follow our policies and procedures. Former Judge Richard Posner put it this way: the Department of Justice wields enormous power over people's lives, much of it beyond judicial or political review. With power comes responsibility, moral if not legal, for its prudent and restrained exercise. And responsibility implies knowledge, experience, and sound judgment, not just good faith. Our Justice Department employees undergo rigorous screening interviews and periodic background checks. With few exceptions, they demonstrate great intellect and integrity, patriotism and wisdom, courage and resilience, No organization with 115,000 employees is error-free, but our virtuous culture and our disciplined procedures promote objectivity and fairness. We are required to comply with an array of laws, regulations, and ethical rules. We maintain experienced, professional, nonpartisan internal watchdogs to investigate credible misconduct allegations. And we face external scrutiny by judges and bar authorities. We correct mistakes, and we punish wrongdoers. For us, the rule of law, it's not just a talking point. It's an operating principle. And the rule of law requires us to ignore partisan politics, to tune out the news cycle, and to base our decisions on credible evidence. Many people have the luxury of dismissing facts that are inconsistent with their pre-existing beliefs. But we face the exacting scrutiny of the federal courtroom. That imposes a powerful discipline. We can't prove our cases with hearsay or anonymous witnesses. We need to produce eyewitnesses. We need to satisfy the rules of evidence. And we need to meet our burden of proof to the satisfaction of a neutral judge and an unbiased jury. Do you know how difficult it is to persuade 12 random citizens of anything? We need unanimous support to win our cases. And we face those rigorous rules because our allegations carry severe consequences. Those rules motivate us to seek only the truth. Pursuing the truth requires us to keep an open mind and to avoid confirmation bias. The truth may not match our preconceptions, it may not satisfy our hopes, but truth is essential to justice. The most important memento in my office is a plaque. It reads, "Don't tell me what I want to hear, just tell me what I need to know." And I enjoyed the support of an exceptional team, which Attorney General Barr and Sessions have referenced, an exceptional team that followed that advice. We stayed the course, and we accomplished what we set out to do. There are many people in this room who stood with me to defend the ramparts of justice. When we are in the right, we keep moving forward. But our confidence is not naive. It flows from an appreciation of the history and the traditions of this great institution. One of the most important lessons for litigators is to begin with the end in mind. Decide what evidence you need for your closing argument and stay focused on it, whatever the ups and downs of the trial. Trial lawyers understand that the most dramatic moments may have very little impact on the final verdict. We learn to ignore the fleeting distractions and focus on the things that matter. Consider what happens when you use a smartphone map to plan a trip. Many things can go wrong during your trip. Traffic may be unexpectedly heavy. Accidents can obstruct your path. You might make a wrong turn. But whenever unexpected challenges occur, the program calmly recalculates and keeps you on a path to your destination. I'm grateful to the friends and relatives who joined me on this journey. My wife, Lisa, made many sacrifices in support of my public service, particularly over the past 2 years. My daughters, Julia and Allison, who, thanks to Jim and the EOUSA team, you saw quite a bit of, which I did not expect. My daughters cheerfully tolerated the disruptions that arise when a parent is in the arena. In fact, congressional hearings are now one of Julie's favorite forms of entertainment. I kid you not. Senator, that's House, not Senate. And Allie enjoys reminding me that I was mistaken when I told her that Deputy AG was a low-profile job. My parents, Robert and Jerry Rosenstein, never wavered in their confidence. Lisa's mother, Alice Barsumian, is another steadfast supporter, and she arrived today with my sister-in-law, Alona Barsumian, and her children, Veronica and Patrick. And there are friends here from elementary school, high school, college, and law school, judges and defense attorneys who shared some of my most memorable trial experiences, colleagues and supervisors who guided me, administrative employees who kept the work flowing, law enforcement agents who spent nights and weekends with me interviewing witnesses, prosecutors who joined me in the trenches. These are the men and women of federal law enforcement. They are some of America's best, brightest, and most patriotic citizens. They deserve our admiration and our respect. Thank you. have to admit that some of the agents I worked with are retired, but I appreciate those of you who came back for this ceremony. At my confirmation hearing, I pledged to defend the independence of the Justice Department, to protect public safety, to preserve civil rights, and to seek justice. I promised to draw on my personal experience with law enforcement officers and to promote public confidence, and I fought for those goals every day. Government officials sometimes face pressures to compromise principles, perhaps even to trade virtue for the appearance of virtue. But we should exercise caution whenever unpleasant circumstances tempt us to disregard timeless principles. It is most important to follow the rules when the stakes are highest. Sticking with traditions is usually the best course. Not always, but usually. After all, that is why they became traditions. Thomas Jefferson reputedly gave this advice: on matters of style, swim with the current. On matters of principle, stand like a rock. The challenge is to distinguish between principle and style, between the things that matter most and the things that matter least. Our Justice Department team focused on important goals. We used results-driven management to improve the department's efficiency and to enhance the impact of our $28 billion budget. We made rapid progress on the law enforcement priorities that Jeff Sessions set: reducing violent crime, curtailing opioid abuse, protecting consumers, improving immigration enforcement, and building confidence in the police, while preserving national security and strengthening federal efforts in other areas. And this department is not just about law enforcement. We represent the government in civil lawsuits. We counsel other agencies. We house prisoners. We administer grants. We collaborate with local, state, and tribal authorities and with international partners. Our influence on America is broad and it is deep. And that influence gives us a unique platform to foster civility. Speaking from this stage on April 1st of 1940, Attorney General Robert Jackson, who else? Attorney General Robert Jackson said that sensitivity to fair play and sportsmanship is perhaps the best protection against the abuse of power, and the citizen's safety lies in the prosecutor who tempers zeal with kindness, who seeks truth and not victims, who serves the law and not factional purposes, and who approaches the task with humility. We follow that mandate every day. If kindness and humility are in short supply outside the walls of justice, that's all the more reason for us to set a good example. I joined the Department of Justice because I believe in the mission. I stayed because I believe in the people. I watched you pursue justice with ceaseless devotion, often at personal sacrifice and sometimes at physical risk. It's a privilege to work with such honorable, principled, trustworthy public servants. Some of my role models were famous political appointees, but many were career public servants like David Margolis, who was renowned for his irreverence and for his love for this department. David gave me some advice about integrity a quarter century ago that stayed with me to this day. I want to thank his wife Debbie and his daughters Kim and Sherry for being here with us today. And in my final moments on this grand stage, I want to leave colleagues who remain behind with these words from another former Attorney General, Edward Levy. As law enforcement officials, you hold a unique and difficult position of enormous responsibility to our society. Many citizens learn what kind of country this is by watching you. And the things they learn, Levy said, include what kindness and decencies we honor as a people. I hope you do your part to carry the baton of justice with kindness and decency and to pass it safely to the next generation. And when you walk the halls of justice, I hope they echo for you with the voices of heroes, mentors, and friends as they do for me. To those who taught me, those who worked beside me, and those who stood behind me, I'm grateful for your friendship, and I'm thankful for your accomplishments. I leave here confident that justice is in good hands. It's in your hands. Thank you and farewell.
Thank you all. Just have one more presentation for the DAG. As you have heard, I'm Ed O'Callahan, and I serve as the Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General. I've been in that role for the last year or so. It's affectionately known as the PAYDAG. And after hearing all the accomplishments of the DAG over his storied career, you might wonder, what do people do to actually support the DAG and his many accomplishments? Well, I know I have one thing that the DAG doesn't have, neither does Rob Hur or Chris Wray, and that's the beard. And you might think, what does the beard have to do with supporting the DAG? Well, I just thought I'd show you a few examples of how this beard has supported the DAG over the last year or so. Last fall, when the DAG went through some rough times, the beard was here to give him some support and comfort in a very difficult time. More frequently, the DAG called upon my beard to provide some stern gravitas to certain moments. For example, when he announced the indictment of several Russians in the 2016 interference with the election. The beard has also been used most recently to focus the media's attention on some important issues, such as who's the bearded guy behind the AG, the same day that some report was issued. So, sir, over the course of this incredible journey with you, my beard has become a signature feature. It's frankly good to be known for something. This has had such a profound and gratifying journey for me personally to be with you on it. I've actually struggled after seeing all the esteemed presenters here today to figure out what I could bestow on you to commemorate our time together. And we've all heard about the phrase, and I've heard it all my life, like, he can give you the shirt off his back, and I would certainly do that. But I don't think that would be appropriate, and I don't think you need a shirt. But I do believe that to commemorate our time together, I will bestow on you the official PAYDAG beard. So that concludes our program for today. I want to just thank all of the people who put this wonderful program together. Again, thank the Rosenstein family for sharing Rod with the department and with the United States for the last almost 30 years. Thank you all for coming here today and helping us celebrate Rod Rosenstein. Thank you very much.